Steve, what are you doing here, man? This is Jeopardy. I think it's the wrong game show.
Yeah, it literally says Jeopardy on the TV behind you.
I mean, you can keep the music if you want, but yeah, it's whatever.
What's number one?
Okay, a buffer is an aqueous solution that can resist up to a set capacity of change in pH upon the addition of either an acid or a base. There exist two types: acidic buffers with weak acids and conjugate bases, or basic buffers with weak bases and conjugate acids. Buffers work because the weak acid or base can neutralize added strong acids or bases. When a strong acid is added, the conjugate base binds the excess H+ ions to form the weak acid, and when a strong base is added, the weak acid donates H+ ions to neutralize the OH acid, forming water.
2.
Thank you, Steve Harvey. The bicarbonate buffer system is based on this equilibrium. When acid is added, the H+ ions shift the equilibrium to the left to form carbonic acid, a weak acid that doesn't significantly change pH. When base is added, formed OH ions bonds with free hydrogen ions to form water, with the now missing H+ being recovered by a shift right, resisting a rise in pH. Maintaining proper blood pH is critical because changes can disrupt oxygen delivery and cellular respiration. Because of this, it occurs almost immediately.
3.
Thanks, Steve Harvey. The Ka value of an acid describes how strongly it dissociates into H+ ions and its conjugate base. Carbonic acid has a relatively low Ka of about 4.3 times 10 to the negative 7, meaning it only partially dissociates into the H+ and HCO3-, allowing similar amounts of both molecules to coexist. This is important because buffers work best when the concentration of the conjugate base is approximately the same as the original acid. This way, the buffer is able to equally neutralize added acid by shifting left and added base by shifting right.
Number 4.
Thanks, Steve. When CO2 levels are too high in the blood, the reaction shifts right, which increases the concentration of H+ ions in the bloodstream, lowering the pH and causing a state of acidosis, which is when there's too much acid in the blood. On the other hand, when CO2 levels are low in the blood, the reaction shifts left, leading to a lot less H+ ions in the blood, causing a state of alkalosis, which is when there's not enough acid or too much base in the blood.
Yes!
5.
Alright, so changes in temperature directly influence the solubility of gases like carbon dioxide in the blood. When temperature rises, CO2 becomes less soluble and more of it turns to gas, which is released as waste in the lungs. Conversely, when temperature falls, CO2 becomes more soluble and more is dissolved into the blood. So, in the example of a fever where body temperature rises, CO2 solubility would decrease, lowering its levels in the blood. Like Dan just mentioned, this would cause the reaction to shift left to reach equilibrium, lowering carbonic acid and H+ levels. And as we all learned in chemistry class, a lower H+ concentration raises pH.
6.
Thank you, Steve Harvey. Other buffer systems that work alongside the carbonic acid bicarbonate buffer system include the phosphate and protein buffer systems. The phosphate buffer system mainly functions inside the cells and in the kidneys, where hydrogen phosphate ions bind to excess H+ ions to form dihydrogen phosphate, helping stabilize pH. The protein buffer system operates primarily in the bloodstream, where proteins such as hemoglobin can donate or accept H+ ions, resisting changes in blood pH.
We got a game now. Somebody's going to win it when we come back. Don't go away. We got a good one.
Closed captioning is sponsored in part by...
Come on, baby, let's go. Welcome back to Family Feud. We got a good one. What's number 1?
Thanks, Steve. The normal pH of human blood is between 7.35 and 7.45, with an average of about 7.4. Maintaining this narrow range is critical for homeostasis because even small pH changes can alter enzyme activity, protein structure, and oxygen binding to hemoglobin. If blood pH moves outside of this range, cellular respiration and organ function are disrupted, potentially leading to life-threatening conditions such as acidosis or alkalosis, which we'll get to in a minute.
2.
Oh, good one. The respiratory and renal systems both contribute to the carbonic acid bicarbonate buffer system and keep homeostasis. The respiratory system is responsible for more short-term pH changes by regulating CO2 levels, with increased breathing rates removing carbon dioxide. This reduces the amount of H+ ions in the buffer system, raising blood pH. The renal system provides more long-term regulation by adjusting the total concentration of H+ and HCO3- in the blood. The kidneys will either excrete H+ in the urine and reabsorb HCO3- in the nephrons to raise pH, or do the opposite to lower pH.
3.
Thank you, Steve Harvey. The systems that are most sensitive to pH changes are the nervous and cardiovascular systems. Both these systems use enzymes, proteins, and carriers that can easily be damaged if pH is too high or too low. If pH levels deviate too much for the nervous system, it can negatively affect excitability of electrons, leading to seizures, comas, and even cell death. For the cardiovascular system, deviations can lead to dilation or constriction of veins and arteries, causing heart arrhythmias and damaged heart function over time.
Number 4.
Thank you, Steve Harvey. The body uses chemoreceptors to detect changes in pH. Peripheral chemoreceptors in the arteries and the aorta detect change in CO2 and pH in the blood, while central chemoreceptors in the medulla detect CO2 levels in the cerebral spinal fluid, indirectly reflecting pH. When a deviation of pH is sensed by either of these two receptors, signals are sent to the medulla to adjust respiratory rates and the excretion of H+ and bicarbonate ions in the kidneys.
5.
Thanks, Steve. Acidosis, or low blood pH, disrupts cellular function primarily by interfering with enzyme activity. Excess H+ ions can bind with enzyme active sites, slowing metabolic reactions necessary for cell survival, which may cause fatigue, weight loss, or nutrient deficiencies. Alcolysis, or high blood pH, reduces the amount of free calcium in the blood, increasing neuron excitability and potentially causing muscle twitching or spasms.
6.
Well, a disease that causes acidosis is diabetes mellitus, which, as we learned in bio class, inhibits the cell's ability to absorb glucose. So, as an alternative way to make ATP, the body is forced to burn lipids for energy. But before lipids can undergo beta oxidation and enter the Krebs cycle, they undergo lipolysis, releasing 1 glycerol and 3 fatty acid molecules. These fatty acids dissolve in the blood, releasing H+ ions and lowering blood pH. Since diabetes mellitus often involves high sugar levels in urine, it can be diagnosed through urine testing and managed with insulin shots or diet changes, depending on if it's type 1 or type 2.
New day!
Great day. Great day. The number 1 answer. They're coming back. Face another family on the field. I'm Steve Harvey. We'll see you next time.